trying to think of the emotions I experienced watching the first one. I remember finding Olaf kind of funny, and I remember Let It Go, for whatever reason, Let It Go has the liberated person. Even if I'm like, I don't necessarily think I agree with the philosophical message this thing is presenting, it still does a number.
Yeah.
It was similar to watching Joker. I remember like he's dancing down the thing. I'm like, yes.
Well, you were one of the few that defended the first Frozen, because most people
defended against
in the Christian community, most people who come from a biblical theology immediately are repulsed by Let It Go, because they see in it the message of all sorts of kinds of liberation that are nefarious. And you defend the first film. Why?
Well, the first one, the Let It Go within the storyline was it was early on in the movie, and it caused the main problem of the movie. Her running out and saying, "I'm just going to let it go, and my powers are let's see what I can do. I'm free. I'm finally free now." Like, you've just totally destroyed your whole city. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I have? Maybe I shouldn't be so liberated," And it was totally not the message. The theme of the movie was not just let it go, love yourself, be yourself. That you could make the case that was more the argument in this one. But even still, the message of the first one was fear versus love. And I think of that verse from 1 John. There's no fear in love, for perfect love casts out fear. And she has this terror of her powers because her parents had this terror of her powers. And so she was taught that virtue is hold it in. Mm-hmm. And so she lives her whole life trying to hold it in, and it isolates her from her sister, and it isolates their whole family and everything. And then finally, okay, I'm just going to let it go. I tried to hold it in. I couldn't. And I'm just letting it all go. And man, I feel liberated. I'm a queen. I'm free. And Arendale's in deep, 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 deep snow. Mm-hmm. I've heard that's got 2 daughters of Frozen watching age, so I've heard that song a number of times. But yeah, the her being liberated was what caused the problem, and when she realized that it was she could control the powers because the love would melt the ice, where the fear would make it lose control, and so however that worked, and then it was that was kind of okay. I can be liberated. I don't have to be encapsulated and just don't feel anything. I can actually have some liberty while having relationships with my family because, and again, another verse, the love covers a multitude of sins, that, the more she uses her powers, the more liberated she is, the more people are at risk around you. And she hurts her sister twice, both times inadvertently. But her sister was the one saying, "No, you stay. We're in this together." And the love covers a multitude of sins. Perfect love casts out fear. That was kind of the message of the first one, and it was intentionally breaking from the Disney trope. It sets it all up for a love story, and of course the Hans becomes the bad guy, and so it's like we're gonna throw that in the garbage. But then you're like, oh, it's Kristoff. He's the one who loves me, and he's come like Olaf. He's riding in like a repugnant reindeer king, pungent reindeer king. And like, oh, if we kiss him, then that'll be that. But like, no, like she sees it like that's the act of true love that can save me. But Hans is about to kill my sister. She goes and she jumps in front of the sword and saves her sister. That was the act of true love that saved her. Right. And Olaf explains to her, true love is when you put others ahead of yourself, caring for another person's needs ahead of your own. And the love story was love between sisters, rather than Eros love, which it always seems to be. So I thought it was great. I mean, it wasn't the same story as friggin' the Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen, but none of the Disney fairy tales are.
True.
And it's like every decade they get a little further and a little further from the original story material because Disney gets a little bolder and bolder and bolder to where now it's just very, very loosely. Oh, this is very loosely based on the story of Rapunzel, but we're just gonna kind of just make it up as we go along.
Yeah, no,
this one's even further.
Yeah, I read through the whole Snow Queen just to see, and there was no relation whatsoever. I kind of like the Snow Queen plot a lot, actually, because it reminds me of a lot of the fairy tales written by G.K. Chesterton, George MacDonald, and because he's very overtly Christian in his
Anderson is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the little girl, it's a little girl and a little boy in that one instead of two sisters, and she's saying her Lord's Prayer, and the boy is the...
But he gets the frozen heart in Frozen.
Yeah, that's the only connection. The only connection
it was like a
is
sin in the heart.
Kind of. It was, just to tell the basic story, was the devil has this mirror which makes everything look evil in it, or it exaggerates the bad, so that anything you look at in the mirror, you can see all the negatives of it.
Right,
Anything
and it
more
shatters.
evil gets exaggerated, and then it shatters and goes into all the world and gets stuck in some people's eyes and in some people's hearts. And basically, you see that happen to the boy, and all of a sudden, all the things he used to love doing with playing with the little girl and everything is like, that flower's... I don't like those flowers. That has the problem. He starts to see negatives in everything.
It relates to Frozen by she gets her head frozen by accident at the beginning, and that can be persuaded, and then the heart is not so easily changed. That needs an act of true love.
Yeah, there's an element of just the fact that the ice affects the heart, but in that one, it's an anti-rationalist thing. It's an the boy sees everything through reason, as opposed to through a kind of Christian or romantic love.
Right.
Because it was from the 1800s, which would have been around the time that the Romanticism movement was happening, and it was a rejection of that seeing everything through reason idea. And so you see the boy, instead of remembering his Lord's Prayer, he could only remember his mathematical tables or something like that. It's just interesting the way Christian Andersen does it. But yeah, no relation whatsoever to Frozen in any way. It's a totally different message, totally different idea. The only thing is that some shards happen to get in some people's hearts. That's as far as the connections go.
Snow and ice. And
there's a Snow Queen, but the Snow Queen does not act. First off, the good guy is not a Snow Queen.
Right.
Nothing is related. So anyway. So do you think the second movie had as good of a message as that first one? Did you...
It was similar with her So the liberation happens at the beginning. Let It Go happens at the beginning. Where she kind of has two liberation songs in the new one. The early one is, what was the early one? Into the Unknown.
Into the Unknown.
I want to go into the. It's kind of like she's saying, "Look, I need to be content here. Like everything's happened. I'm happy. I've learned my lesson from before. The ones I love are here. This is where I want to be. Why is this still calling me? How do you know that I want to bust out into the unknown?" And so when she finally goes to respond to the voice, her real liberation song is at the end when it's show yourself, and the you're the one that you've been looking for. It's kind of like she kind of gets the self actualization at the end of the movie. She kind of realizes it, and it's not quite the same as if Let It Go in the original had been the kind of final message. The Let It Go in the original was this is the danger of just liberty, of being self actualized, and just I'm the thing that matters, do what pleases me. That was a danger in the first one, but it's kind of like he who would save his life must lose it, but he who loses his life for my sake and for the gospel's sake will find it. So once she is willing to say, love means self-sacrifice. The love that I have for my family, the love that I have for my kingdom, the self-sacrifice I'm willing to do to be the queen and to be with and to have this relationship with my family. Once she learns that lesson, now she can learn what her purpose is. And in the first one, there was no reason why she had the powers. They were just a problem. Mm-hmm. They were just a problem for everybody else. And when she just says, heck with everybody else, I'm going to do it, That's where it caused the problem. Well, in this one, it's like, so why do you have those powers? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of gives the backstory, and here's the purpose that you have, and so she's self-actualized within a greater, grander purpose. It's the difference between, it's like why a lot of Christians were very uncomfortable with the Harry Potter series and how popular the Harry Potter series was. It wasn't just puritanical fuddy-duddiness. Because the same person who would read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to their kids would be uncomfortable with their kids reading Harry Potter as, an 11-year-old. It's the magic was different.
Right.
The magic in Narnia was something outside, something the kids were discovering and understanding. It was the deep magic, that Aslan spoke of. It wasn't something that the kids had in their wand and could manipulate.
Well, it is something, to caveat that a little bit, it is something in Harry Potter that you discover, but it's discovery in the way scientific discovery is.
Right.
You have to go and read your books and memorize the spells. You have to open it.
But it's kind of for you.
It is for you, but I'm saying also there's just a little bit more of there's a discovery, not in the sense of you're discovering some principles or some ancient magic. You're just that was there before you, some overarching moral order to the universe.
Exactly.
It's discovering something that you can manipulate. Exactly. It's like a scientific kind of knowledge, when it is knowledge at all.
Right. And so the magic in the first one was more the Harry Potter type magic that Elsa
just had something. Yeah.
And she held it in, and then, heck with it, I'm letting it go. But that caused problems. Well, the magic in the second one was, this is why you have this. Do you understand the background of what the purpose is? You were a gift to your mother. And the gift to your mother as a reward for her self-sacrificial loving of her enemy. Mm-hmm. She saved her father, and who were enemies, and that's what led to the restoration, which is why they said, look, Arendelle deserves someone with this kind of power to do what it needs to accomplish.
So do you think the same message in the first one is in the second one, the same kind of thing where the love that Anna seems to be having is rebuked, and in the first one you were talking about how that's the case, where she she goes after Hans, and then she goes after Kristoff, thinks those kinds of loves are going to save her, but then she has a self-sacrificial love for Elsa. In this next one, though, I noticed that they had this real Disney Channel morality moment where she's like, I do want you to be self-actualized, and it's just that I don't want you to try to be everything to everybody. And she has that thing, and then Elsa goes whoosh, and sends her away, and then goes and self-sacrifices or whatever. Do you think they're trying to do the same kind of message there, or are they actually inverting it because she ends up being the one, herself?
I remember I actually wrote down to myself, is Elsa going to be vindicated or not for sending Olaf and Anna away? You remember, she's like, you promise we're going to be this together, and she goes, yes. And she sends her down the mountain and says, I have to go by myself.
Yeah.
And I think she was vindicated in doing that.
Right. Well, the movie wants that to be seen as a good thing for sure.
Because she couldn't have possibly gotten to where she's going with Olaf and Elsa and Anna in tow. Right. But the thing is, even Olaf gets mad, which is weird. Because in the first one, Olaf is the embodiment of their childlike love.
Right.
Where Marshmallow, the giant monster snowman, is the embodiment of Elsa's fear.
Okay.
Right, and that's why I was saying the ending should have been, the ending with the monster shouldn't have been them just escaping. It should have been Olaf standing up and destroying him. But it would have been a little much for a kids movie and be difficult to pull off with those characters. But that was kind of the message of the movie, was that love overcomes fear. Like the things that are scary can be handled.
That would have been pretty epic, though, like a little tiny Olaf standing up like a Yoda figure or something. Right,
exactly.
To a big,
like a Gandalf, you shall not pass. But cool. Then that Olaf was getting mad. He's like, I have anger towards Elsa, and Anna's like, you have every right to be angry towards Elsa. It was weird because she didn't love Elsa any less when she was mad at her. Like, she did not agree. you know.
Right. So it's a more mature love then. You're seeing the more mature love in Olaf.
That yes, very more mature love, exactly. Which the Olaf was the childlike love, like I'm a snowman, I like warm hugs, and it was the girls built a snowman together. That was the love that they had. But remember, in this movie, what was every song Olaf sung, every statement Olaf made that was so funny. His character was so hilarious in the sequel. It was even funnier in the second one than he was in the first one. He was what was the line right at the beginning? We were just in stitches over.
I think
where
I know
he
what
says,
you're talking about. Everything. Well, no, it's not.
No, he's saying you're older and therefore omniscient, or you're older and therefore all-knowing. It's like, I can't wait till I'm old enough not to care about things that are important. And he keeps singing, "This will all make sense when I am older." He's like, "This really seems bad, but it'll make sense when I'm older." He's like, he recognizes his need to grow up. He recognizes his need to be mature, and that was in the first one. Like, we can be together as sisters and love each other together as sisters because we have love, and the things that we are afraid of are real and they're there. There is the giant marshmallow snowman, but Olaf can take care of him. But the perfect love casts out fear. Love covers a multitude of sins. In this one, there is kind of irreconcilable difference there. Anna thinks, I should be with you as you're going on this adventure. Elsa's like, you cannot come with me on this adventure. And even Olaf is like, well, that makes me mad. But that's part of the maturity. It's like two adults who are, siblings when they're younger, probably won't live with each other when they're older. Might not live in the same city, or might not live in the same country.
They make different choices. Yeah.
And that's how the movie ends, with them each having their own separate individual responsibilities, kind of self-actualized.
With a love bridge connecting them.
With the mature, the grown-up love still able to bring about peace between peoples. Even like they had the city and the tribe were able to dwell in peace because of the mature love that they had.
Right, so a bridge instead of the dam. Interesting. I hadn't really thought about what maybe they're trying to say there with the differences. But to cap off what you were saying on the Olaf love connection, they explicitly make that. Well, they make it explicit in that scene in the cave with Anna basically saying, or Olaf's going, there's a whole song about certainties and whether or not you can have them and all of that, and there's that theme of maturity of what do you do when there's no certainties, and Anna's moral response is just do the next right thing.
Take the next right step.
During that whole thing, Olaf says, is it Olaf who says it or Anna who says it, that the only thing that's constant is love? Mm-hmm. Right. So I think you're right that you're picking up on something there. Do you think what do you think the message is in this one about love, other than the fact that it's a deeper kind of more mature love? What do you think the actual message of this one is?
It seems to me that
you said the old one was perfect love casts out fear. What would the message of this one be, if anything?
The message of this one was the self-actualization happens once self-sacrificial love is understood. Like, she was able to have the let it go experience in its proper place. That's what it seemed. That was what kind of it seemed to be saying to me. Like, she is able to say, you're the one that you've been looking for. Like, you're the you have this purpose, that you have these powers to be used. And you're there. You have, like, she understood purpose, and she was liberated, by the end.
So there's definitely a theme of liberty there, and I think
within the context, though, of understanding what self-sacrificial love is. I mean, there's a bunch of little sub themes that I thought were some interesting, like symbolism and stuff. Like when the wind spirit is angry, it's the first one to show up, and it's angry. Like so Elsa liberates the four spirits. Which that was another interesting thing, the wind, water, earth, and fire.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the underlying meanings, the substrat of the film, by talking about, well, it always gets deep when it starts talking about pagan things and when it starts using biblical language. And there's a couple places where that is, and I want you to get your thoughts on that. One, of course, the other tribe
The
is
indigenous peoples,
and
which of course there's none in Norway, but this should have taken place in Alaska, like it's the Inuit tribe or something. But
doesn't make sense.
they,
Yeah.
they just need. We've been doing,
They need
Scandinavia
an indigenous
so far.
tribe
Let's
thing,
just throw an indigenous tribe in Scandinavia.
right. The indigenous tribes would have been white.
Right, exactly.
Right, exactly. But anyway, so there's an indigenous tribe. They have their own little pagan things, which oddly sounded a lot like, in my opinion, their little chant thing they did with their sticks sounded a lot like the Prince of Egypt.
Yeah.
Na, 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 na.
Well, yeah, that had nothing to do. I mean, it was Norse in the original. Like that was the background music, and I think I should go back and watch, but I think that was similar to what was being sung during Elsa's coronation in the original.
Huh.
That, I mean, it was not, and they added some rhythm to it to make it feel more tribal.
Tribal, right? Exactly right. So there was that tribal element that had to do with the other that they were encountering and that they had to bridge and form loving bonds with and all that. But the biblical part that I'm talking about is in Elsa's self-actualization. They use a lot of biblical language, like that. For instance, the song "Show Yourself," which I think is deliberately playing off of the idea of revelation. Like, so she's constantly, her parents told her things when she was young, stories, right? And they have these kinds of overtones, and she knows her meaning is in there somewhere. And as she dives into that and tries to go back to it, she's like following a still small voice that's somehow associated with conscience, as the Anna thing. We can talk about that more. But she's following that small voice through the stories, using the stories that she's been given as a child, and then gets there and is like, "Show yourself to me," talking to an other, right? Saying
some spirit thing
that she doesn't know what it is, some fifth element, something behind the world that she is assuming is good the whole time.
And she knows. Yeah, she says she knows to be good.
Yeah,
because everybody else kind of assumes it's a malevolent force.
Right, and so she's just sure that whatever's behind this, all the spirits in the world or whatever, is some kind of good. And then she gets there and she says, "Show yourself," which seems to me, to whoever's writing this, is deliberately saying the Bible, whether this is a Jewish person or a liberal Protestant person writing this, as you go into the Bible, you're going to find that what's behind this is really you.
Is really you. Yourself.
Yeah, you yourself are the thing, and then you, through, I don't know, just the kind of whatever that it reminds me of liberal Protestantism for this reason. Liberal Protestantism seems to me to have the constant impulse to find whatever the kernel is in the Bible, right? That there's some kind of kernel within it. You don't believe the fluff, you keep knocking off the husk, and then you get down to whatever the real gospel message is, just this little thing inside the stories, right? That seems to have been the idea of liberal Protestantism. And I can...
the whole social gospel movement was that. Like, okay, are we really going to preach all these dogmas to the people? What we really want to preach is Christian love.
Right.
What's unique about Christianity is self-sacrifice. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your enemies. All things that Elsa's mother did and learned. And it was Elsa's mother that showed up and said, "You are the one that you've been looking for."
Well, exactly right. And this seems to be where liberal Protestantism always gets, is by trying to find that kernel within Christianity, what Christianity truly is, they make it into some kind of self-sacrificial love that they then assume is in all other religions. Right. And so they find in their own past this horrible evil and conquest and all this. So Christian history...
Good old faithful white colonialism. Right. Somehow a white colonialist exploited an indigenous tribe in Norway somehow.
Right.
But figured out a way to make old reliable bad guy the bad guy.
Right, but they try to find, in the other they find Christianity, and in themselves they only find an oppressor, essentially, or in their own history they only find
Well, sort of, but what was interesting about that was Arendelle proved herself worthy. Like the spirits were like, "We're not going to destroy Arendelle." We sent them Elsa, and Elsa came and
Okay, now we've gotten to the place where I want to test my theory on you and see what I thought the movie was actually saying deep down under the surface behind everything.
Okay. So Arendelle, the question is, should Arendelle have been destroyed or not?
Well, that it turns on that, and the reason why I think Disney didn't have it destroyed.
Because it's a children's movie. I said they should have just
They
had
could totally have. I'm sorry, if
They did
in
have
the
everybody
Lion
escape.
King, you can have little Nazi whatever those things are, hyenas. That was some scary garbage.
That was a
as
scary
kid.
song. No,
Yeah.
Ursula was by far the scariest villain, and I'm not talking of just Disney
You were
movies.
you were the youngest when that happened. That's why.
I would have been 3 in the movie theater. I still it was literally chaining the spirits of these people in eternal torment without any hope of escape in a jar on her desk. Like, that was what she was doing to people.
Yeah, that was pretty. Yeah,
She
we
was
had some hardcore.
She was a terrifying
The
villain.
funny part is those aren't even hardcore children's things to depict them. They were hardcore for us, but old children's
that's
books
the thing.
are
the
way
Little
worse.
Mermaid, the Disney's Little Mermaid totally softened Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid.
Yeah, can you imagine if they were depicting what was in the old ones, like eating the kids and stuff? Oh my goodness. Okay, anyway, we kind of got sidetracked there. So the point is,
I was expecting like this Noahic ending of, no, it's going towards Arendelle. No, it just floods the people, and they all like, no, Arendelle survives. That was
well, what should have happened, and I think you're right in this, if they wanted to make the movie a perfect liberal Protestant, liberalism promoting movie, where liberalism is the kernel of Christianity, and you can find it in all religions, blah, 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 blah.
Self-sacrifice was the kernel of Christianity.
Yes,
and it
but
makes
that's not my
liberalism
point. That's not
possible.
my point. The self-sacrifice element could have still been there if the spirits wiped out Arendelle and had to restart it again through some kind of fundamental transformation, rather than giving it like some kind of second chance.
Arendelle didn't need the second chance. That was the point. There was one bad guy, the grandfather.
No. But for the sins of the fathers, the whole thing needed to be wiped out. That I think would have had if to make liberalism the point of the movie, you'd have watch.
But no, that would have been the proper ending in pre-Trump United States.
Maybe, but hold on.
Like there was
Let me
allowed
explain.
to be a a West promoting, like, okay, we've done some wrong things.
Hold
but
on, let me get
we
you.
were still virtuous,
Hold
right?
on.
That was Arendelle was.
You're
sorry,
kind of stepping on my point here, but
Go ahead.
I think mine will make sense to you. If the movie was going to be pre-Trump liberalism promoting in the old-fashioned way, the Obama era,
Right.
America needs fundamental transformation.
Right.
It would have had to have been a complete wipeout. The spirits would have had to come wipe it out and then birth it anew with that new generation that had apologized for their parents' sins.
Right.
Elsa said that was wrong. Like, she found the old sin, rebuked it, and then
Right.
she could have founded a new Arendelle, which would have been on the true principles that they falsely believed the old Arendelle was always believing in, right? Because you hear Anna say that at once. But that goes against everything Arendelle stands for.
That's right.
Right? Because in a liberalism promoting movie, liberalism is the kernel of America, just like in liberal Protestantism, that liberal
But that's
Christianity
what I'm saying.
is.
That's not what the movie's saying.
No, I know. Hold on. But in order to make that perfect liberalism movie, to make it mirror the liberal Protestantism that typically has governed the Disney for a long, long time,
Right.
they would have need to have the whole thing be wiped out, restart again, and to have probably have Elsa either be lesbian or possibly pansexual, like beyond sexuality or something like that, in order to show what the real kernel of liberalism is, this just getting beyond all material limits, whatever. That would have been a perfect liberal movie if they wanted to go that way. They didn't, and they didn't in one specific way. And here's what I think the message of the movie is. Because of that, I think the message of the movie is this: instead of being full on liberal, the United States needs to be trashed in the name of some new utopia or some new start.
Right.
It's instead saying it can be redeemed if the current generation rejects the old sins. Let me put it this way. I think the message of the movie is a take on Charlottesville.
Take on the Charlottesville protest.
Correct. The Charlottesville protests, where it was all about what? Tearing down a particular monument that the past had built, right? Which is kind of like that dam, which was supposed to be something that was about some... It supposedly had some virtue to it. It supposedly had some... You had to tear that down. That was the point. That's what Anna had to accomplish. She had to tear that down. And once she tore that down, then Arendelle could be saved. And they would, or at the very end, what did they do? They erected a new monument with the two different race parents in marriage. So they had to erect a new monument that lacked the intentional division that the old monument symbolized and captured. So I think what it really is saying is, the message of the movie, in my view, is tear down the Confederate statues, and America can be. We can all be pro-America again once we tear down those statues.
Once we tear down the statues, we can all be pro-American again. But it does seem to be acknowledging Elsa's point, or Anna's point, that is not Arendelle. You know, what the grandfather did was a betrayal of Arendelle, not true Arendelle. Where the Barack Obama liberalism would have been, no, that's Arendelle. That's why Arendelle needs to be destroyed, right?
Right.
But because it was like, no, there is a, and it's not that liberalism was the kernel within Western truth or Christian truth. It was that self-sacrificial love is the kernel within Christianity that enables liberalism to succeed. Like she couldn't just be liberated from the original. That caused problems. She needed to learn self-sacrificial love to drive out the dangers and the fears that come as a result of liberalization and actualization. But once that's learned, you can move on to the liberalism can really exist. It can really thrive. But it seems like there was more of a conservative message than you would have expected. So Arendelle was worth saving, was diverse, you know, like there was a biracial king and queen, or not biracial, a multiracial, what's it called? Yeah, interracial marriage as the king and queen.
And there were also other races.
There were the right-hand man of the king, the one who Anna says, trust me, this thing has to come down. He believes her. And he's black. You know, you don't see many black soldiers in Norway. But he talked about how his family was always on the move and things changed, and his parents were saying, so he obviously was from somewhere else. But Arendelle embraced him, and he embraced Arendelle, and he stood for Arendelle. And he said, okay, Anna says this thing has to come down. We have to be willing to reject the things that are bad of our past in order to go forward. It's just kind of like the way we look at American history of, there was Thomas Jefferson owned slaves, and he was a voice for liberty in the history of the world, you know, with very few equals, you know. And so it's kind of like, yes, address the problems of the past, but the Howard Zinn is wrong about the history of America and the history of the West being nothing but imperialistic evil that needs to have a Marxian revolution and just start from the beginning.
Is it saying that, though? That's actually an interesting question.
Well, and also, like, I was thinking, like, the old, like Pocahontas and Dances with Wolves and Fern Gully and what's the recent one with all the computer-generated special effects? Avatar. They're all the same stupid story. They're much more Eurocentric. Like, they're much more self-flagellating. It's like, the evil man has come into the forest, and us poor fairies, or us poor Indians, or us poor whatever those blue people are.
Right, the romantic view of the pre-civilized pagan world.
the noble savage and the evil white man. But it always had to be a white man who incarnates to save them. They couldn't possibly save themselves. Kevin Costner has to go and dance with the wolves, and now he can save them. John Smith can go and learn the error of his ways, and then he can save them.
That's actually interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
They're much more Eurocentric in their. It's like the Democratic Party has always been more racist, than the Republican Party, while congratulating itself on being so anti-racist. This movie was the indigenous people saved themselves. It was the mother was an Indian, and she learned and understood self-sacrificial love. Like she had the Christian virtue. She loved her enemy, and she was the one who saved them. And that there wasn't a incarnation going in there. It's like the spirits said, no, Arendale's okay. Let's send them Elsa. Let's send them a spirit that can free and undo what their past sins had done, because they're not like that past sin does not define them. Right? And so the two tribes were kind of on equal footing. It wasn't like these guys are the poor victims, these guys are the powerful evil oppressors, and they need one hero from here to go learn the error of his ways and save them.
Right,
it was, so someone from their own had saved them. It was just an interesting and different take. It was just much less liberal, I think.
I don't know if it was much less liberal.
Well, much less. Or its liberalism had a deeper conservative element than you would expect from a movie that has a war between an indigenous tribe and an ancient European civilization. Right?
So what do you think the message then of that is? Because the part of the things that I'm trying to attach to that are the scenes in the film, the moments in the film, the deliberate lines in the film, like that flag will never come down. I forget who said that.
Anna said that. She was talking about the things that change, things that stay the same. But you remember the wind came and it ripped the flag off.
It ripped the flag off. Exactly right. So she was to tie it back to the theme of maturing. Mm-hmm. She was looking for certainties. Those were being stripped away from her one by one. One of her certainties was that flag, basically what's in our national anthem. The flag is still there, or whatever. All
right,
that.
Yeah, exactly.
It almost seems to me like this message is, in some ways, it seems like it's post-Trump, post-Obama fundamental transformation idea. But in another way, it seems like maybe this is like a too little too late kind of thing. Because it seems like a message that would be ripe for, like, for instance, the children, Elsa and Anna. What they're being told from birth is that Arendelle is a good place. It has these ideals. Anna obviously believes those ideals. That's not what Arendelle stands for. So they're being taught a view of what America or Arendelle stands for. And then they have to learn some uncomfortable truths.
Yes.
Reject those truths, or reject those elements of their past, and then they can kind of.
Yeah.
They have
so
saved
you could
their
say
country.
that the relationship between siblings is analogous to the relationship with your own history. Like the two little kids are just like Olaf. They're just innocent and just love each other, and that's how you're able to overcome the fears of your self-actualization. As you get older, you're going to hurt each other, but the love is able to melt the snow, but as you grow up, there's some bigger fears and there's some bigger issues that are going to need to be addressed. And that was Olaf in this movie. And so the Elsa and Anna's relationship is the microcosm. They're separate now. They're one on each side of the bridge, both fulfilling their purpose. Anna as the queen of Arendelle and Elsa as the protector of the forest, but they still love each other, but it's an older love and it's a more mature love, and it's a love that's able to.
This is interesting
to see the flaws of their past and able to. It's what they are able to do as sisters. The West needs to be able to do
right. Two things there
with their own history.
Yeah, two things there. The first point that I was trying to make is I think that's an interesting message for a previous generation, right? This generation is not growing up with an innocent love of country the way that our parents would have, or that even we did. they don't have that. They have their innocence was taken up by an anti-Western mythos. They believe
Howard
all of
Zinn
the
took over
negatives.
the-
Yeah, they basically exactly right. Ocasio-Cortez never had any illusions about America. She
Right.
never was innocently waving her flag saying this is the land of the free. No, if she's saying this is the land of the free, she's doing it because politics forces her to do that, and deep down she thinks is a fundamentally flawed country that needs to be chastised or transformed. Right. So I think in that sense, whatever that message is, as great as that is, that you need a mature love that once you have that love that was innocent, and then you start seeing the problems.
But I'm not necessarily saying this is an so the microcosm is the individual in their family, the sisters. Mm-hmm. The macrocosm is the society. Okay. It's not saying like the Gen Z kids growing up with Howard Zinn as their history teacher. Like, yeah, that what we're saying is the flag waving American that voted for Donald Trump because they were sick of people hating on their country for so long. That spirit, that attitude, like after 9/11, just the guy selling flags on the side of the road for $20 a pop. You know, everybody, instead of putting their college football team's flag on there or the New York Yankees flag, they had the American flag. Like that love of country is like the childlike love. It's good and it's necessary and it's helpful, but it needs to mature. Right.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I just I wonder if that really makes much sense, at least to connect it to the nationalism element in a time period where we just kind of blew past the innocent stage.
I don't know that we did. I mean, Donald Trump won the election by hugging the American flag all the time. It was like the way that the political left dominated media and Hollywood and everything that seemed to tell you America hates itself. America is self-loathing, and rightfully so because she's evil. It just seemed like the American people didn't buy it, right? Even Joe Biden has to be pro-American in his speech, right? You remember, he actually had a pretty moving in his initial speech where he was saying,
Charlottesville is not who we are, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Charlottesville, the home of Thomas Jefferson, right? Who said all men are created equal. We haven't always lived up to those ideals. Jefferson himself didn't. But it's always been who we are and who we're striving to. And he's appealing to the political left. He's talking to Democrats, and he's leading. You know, so I think
leading.
We'll see how this video ages. I think he will at least be the Democrat nominee. Anyway, I think that's Obama was an anomaly more so than Trump. Trump is more a correction, and Obama was the anomaly.
I don't see a connection to Trump or really Obama in the movie. I don't see this movie saying anything about how Trump's patriotism is some kind of naive patriotism, and that we need to move to a more deep Biden-esque patriotism.
Okay.
I don't know. I see the element of maturity. I see the element of needing yourself to go through change. How do you tie that in? Okay, so we're taking the nationalist idea, and we're seeing how that plays through the movie, and we're talking about the flag, how the flag meant something, then it got torn away, and then it's restored, and the land is still there. How does the theme of transformation, which Olaf says explicitly at the end, he's like, I still don't know what transformation means, but I'm glad we all changed.
We're all different than we
were. Is that not an Obama-esque, maybe Elsa represented by going back into the past and rejecting the past and our sins of the past? She was the new American, that we've had this fundamental transformation once we're all like Elsa, and we all essentially reject our sinful past, where we are the cause of the divisions that we have, or whatever. You see that in there more?
we're all changed as a result of it, but I think that's more, just growing up, more puberty almost. On the micro scale, that was Anna and Elsa being willing to have not just a misunderstanding like they have in the first one,
Right.
where we still love each other. Why can't we be friends like we were when we were kids? Well, now I understand. Our parents wouldn't let you because they were terrified you were going to kill me with your powers. Okay, misunderstanding. We can love each other again. No, this is a fundamental disagreement. You're hearing this call and need to go into the woods. I think that sisters need to stick together. You and I disagree. Can love overcome that? Well, only if we've both grown. Only if we're mature. Only if we're willing to be one, the Queen of Arendelle, one, the protector of the forest, and still have a more mature relationship with each other.
All right, fair enough.
That's what I think, and I think the macro scale, I mean the Arendelle was different now. They had gone through a change in that they have a restored relationship with this tribal people, and they're friends again, right? Or they're friends where they hadn't been.
But it wasn't a tearing down. And
It wasn't
rebuilding.
it wasn't a Marxian revolution.
So it's liberalism, not Marxism.
Yes.
Essentially, right. Huh.
Right, with a tinge of conservatism. Like it was like the Arendelle is good and virtuous, and the tribal people kind of believe the same thing that we do at our best, at their best.
Interesting. Yeah, that actually ties to another question I had for you. Is the message at the end where you have this kind of separate, with it go your own way kind of thing with bridges that connect you, is that a multiculturalist kind of stance at the end?
Yeah, it's definitely not an imperialist stance. It's not like liberalism was, or liberal Protestantism was the softest imperialism the world's ever seen.
True.
We are like Christianity. Well, we don't need to convert them into believing in God created the earth in 6 literal days and died on a physical cross and raised from the dead. What we need to convince them is Christian love is the best, right?
Right.
And their religions probably already say something like that,
Right.
That and so we're gonna just make Iraq safe for democracy. It's like the neoconservatism's kind of the last bastion of liberal Protestant imperialism.
Yeah.
It's not the imperialism of the sword, but of the handout. And it doesn't seem to have that. I guess it does seem to have that message somewhat, but it wasn't that they were converting the tribe. It's that the tribe already had it.
Yeah, there's a kind of a thin line between multiculturalism and the Westphalian construction of the West, where everybody's kind of allowed to go their own way.
If this becomes a trilogy, and now suddenly there's a tribal people who are like, no, it's either us or you, and then they have to deal with Arendelle's past of no, we are European pagans. We're not self-sacrificial Christians.
Right, then we could really see which side of that they come on.
That would be an interesting trilogy. We'll see how their Return of the Jedi comes.
They matured a lot to this film. Can they mature so much more in 7 more years now it's a film like R-rated for adults?
It would be more like Return of the Jedi was, this is for kids anyway. Let's just have the little Ewoks run around.
Oh, geez. And just a rehash of the first one?
Yep, exactly. That's what it would be. Don't make it a trilogy. If you're watching this.